All right, good morning, everybody. Good morning. All right, it is a little warm in here, which will give the very real opportunity that I will be sweating very, very badly up here. But it may also give the opportunity for you to want to take a nap. So I will do my best. I will do my best to keep you alert and aware, and I have a few questions built in, so I will be at least asking for some raising of hands every once in a while for things that may or may not describe you. But it is good to see everybody out this morning. Appreciate you coming out. It was a little slick, at least at my house this morning, getting out and getting down here. So I appreciate you making the trip down here. As we typically do when we meet together, I like to start out just by reviewing our core values. And I like to start out by reviewing Jesus' core value. And we have observed for many, many weeks now that Jesus had this value, and Jesus would always value people. Oops, I'm on the wrong side. You'd think I'd be prepared for this. Jesus valued people. At Cochranton Community Church, we have 8 core values. Those core values are Bible. I heard outreach, prayer. I like how you like to bury me. Service, community, and then you give me words like community that I don't know how to spell. Relevant, that's a word I really don't know how to spell. I just sort of scribble it. Relevance. Oh, all right, we're missing 2. What are those 2? Worship and stewardship. And then within any group that meets has some core values. Within this group, we have 2 core values. Those 2 core values are growth and timeliness. Growth and timeliness. So that's what we have as far as core values. I want to give just some logistics here. We're going to be doing a more focused study here over the next several weeks, I have plans to be here every week, but I'm going to need some help on the 28th. January 28th, it looks like I will need a teaching partner on the 28th. So I just share that with you. Should that be something you'd be interested in, I'd be happy to work with you to continue that. If you have your own lesson that you think people may like to hear, I'd be happy to help you with that. But for the next 2 weeks, next week we're going to be looking at this concept of awareness, and the week after that we're going to be seeing the lessons that we can learn from a mirror. So those I'm sure those are a little bit mysterious as far as you want to get up on a Sunday morning to come learn about awareness, or if you want to come look at a mirror. But that's what we're going to be looking at the next couple of weeks. Now I will tell you that I have been looking forward to this lesson for the last several weeks now, and it's a lesson that I have taught before, at least partially. From time to time. The last time I at least partially taught this lesson would have been about a year ago. January of last year, I touched on this concept of consistency that we're going to be looking at, and I thought that the preparation as such would be a lot easier. I thought, just go back. So I have this box where I put all my notes in, and if you look at my notes now, I type them up, right? I type them up and then I blow the font up so I can see them because I'm old. Whenever I taught this last, I knew I had just done it by hand. I knew I had some paper somewhere where I had handwritten out all my notes. And so I started on the safari to find it. And if you think I could find that lesson, you would be sorely mistaken. I remember the last time I taught this lesson, we were actually meeting back in the pre-K room. So as you go down the hallway, the first one there on the left. And I knew I didn't record it and this, that, and the other thing. And so I was like, man, I am in the soup here. I was really planning on this being an easy prep week, right? I thought this would just be a little bit of an easy one for me to do. But what I found is, as I searched and searched and searched, I found that the last time I taught this was when was it? Maybe about October of 21. And actually, it turns out that at that time we were under quarantine. We had a COVID exposure. I think it was my mother had been exposed, and we had dinner with my parents. And as such, we were advised to stay home. So I actually, the last time I taught this lesson, I did record it. It is on my Facebook page if you ever want to go back and look at it. And because I like to make things difficult, this is your opportunity to confirm that. Yes. Yeah, I do. I do like to make things difficult. I decided I'll just build a new lesson. I'll build a new lesson. So if you want to go back and watch the old one, you're welcome to do that. But this one is going to be this one's going to be a little bit different. You know, and you may want to go back and watch it because the lesson that we have today is both practical and impactful. This is a concept that can absolutely change your life today. So with that, when we're going to be talking about specifically growth principles over the next couple of months, that's very much what we're going to be locked in on. And the cornerstone verse I use whenever I teach these lessons is Luke 2:52. So for those of you that have your Bibles in front of you, you may want to turn to this. It's a very simple verse, but it's one that is, I think, is very, very impactful, very, very practical for us to keep in mind. Luke 2:52 reads, "And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man." You know, and I don't know where you come from. I don't know what your background is, but I would tell you that at least in my experience, it becomes easy to think that, you know, Jesus was this perfect man and all these different things, and he was just born that way. Like everything was just, he was born perfect and this. But Luke 2:52 tells us that he grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man, which that shows us that Jesus was born, but Jesus also developed. He also had, I mean, he obviously grew from an infant to an adult, but a number of other things changed there along the way. So when we notice this, that Jesus grew, and as followers of Jesus, we want to do the things that Jesus did. So if Jesus grew, that's our invitation for us to grow as well. Now, when we look at these laws of growth, they're all important. They're all equally important. The one that I typically start with is the law of intentionality. All right, the law of intentionality. That is the primary growth law that I look at. Now, those of you that have been with me for a little while know that since we actually started this class when we went back to school, I actually taught the law of intentionality as a standalone lesson last fall. I guess that was in early October, according to my notes here. I'll just touch very, very briefly on this. I did go back and find that lesson, and I moved it to the top of my little Facebook page. If you want to go back and rewatch the lesson on the law of intentionality, I would encourage you to do that. But in a very simple way, the law of intentionality states that growth doesn't just happen. You don't just grow on any given day, right? And I've added to that growth happens just. If you decide that you want to put some effort into it, you will get some growth that goes along with that. And I will tell you that I have taught that. I remember when I learned that lesson, the impact that it had on me. And I have taught that lesson so many times, be it little snippets, long form, short form, over the years. And I know that it's had an impact even on some of you. I know that because some of you have shared that with me, that, oh my goodness, being intentional is something that, something that had often been overlooked. something that is often overlooked. But I'm here today to tell you that intentionality has its limits. Intentionality has its limits. And, we're here in the early days of the new year. Now, by show of hands, how many of you know someone who in the new year has said, I would like to lose some weight? How many of you know somebody that would like to lose weight in the new year? How many of you may actually be that person that wants to lose, right? That sort of describes me, right? We probably all know somebody that applies to, but we need to recognize that you can be intentional about that, but being intentional just once doesn't get you very far. It doesn't get you very far. Being intentional is sadly not enough. We must be intentional again and again and again and again and again and again and again, which brings us to this week's lesson. It brings us to this week's law. And I guess I'll just turn the page here and we'll do it this way. This week is the law of consistency. Now, the law of consistency states, if I can find it here, motivation gets you going. Gets you going. But discipline keeps you growing. Motivation gets you going. Discipline keeps you growing. Now, there are three words that come to me, and I sort of group them together. And the words that I group together are consistency, persistency, or persistent, and persevere. These are words that, at least in my head, they seem to mean about the same thing. Would anybody agree with that? I'm trying to keep you awake. Does anybody agree that those words, there's a lot of overlap between those particular words? And I would tell you that I recently taught about persistence. If you want to go back and look at the persistence lesson, that was in August of last year. I want to just unpack these differences. And these are my definitions. I did not consult Dr. Google or anything like that. This is just the definitions that I have. Being consistent is something you do regularly. You're consistent, you do it. It's time after time after time after time with whatever that cadence is. Now, persistence is you're going to do something, but you don't feel like it. Right? Have you ever done that? Have you ever had to do something that you just didn't really feel like doing it, but you had to go and do it anyway? Like, when we were kids, how many of you have a sibling? How many of you had a disagreement with a sibling as a child? Oh, you all did. Surprise, right? How many of you had to go apologize to the said sibling? Like, you didn't really feel like doing it. Right? And some of you had to do it again and again and again. That's persistence. Like, I don't really feel like it. I'm sorry, right? You go through it, right? So persistence is you're doing something, but you don't really, like, your heart's not always in it, right? You're doing something even when you don't feel like it. Now, persevere, I would say this is when we do something, but stuff is actively against us. Do something under adversity. Right? Like, some of you had to persevere to get to church today. Right? The roads may have been bad, may have been slippery, you may have had to, you had things that were actively against you coming in here this morning, right? So those are the ways that I sort of differentiate this today. But today we're going to lock in specifically on this one. We're going to lock in specifically on consistency, doing something regularly. And you know what? There's a lot of people who like to start things, right? Anybody here a good starter? You start something, but finishing it is a little bit different. Keep going with it. Like, you know, that's something that's out there. There's a world of difference between starting and continuing. There's a world of difference. And that's what the law of consistency points out to it. You see, we're in a new year, right? And when the new year comes, what happens? People are motivated. It's a new year. I'm going to do, this is going to be my year. I'm going to do these things different. I'm going to be all excited about this. You know, and they'll even be intentional for a little bit, right? But we know that over time, people fade out. People fade out over time with what it is that they're doing. Perhaps this will resonate with you. You started a new job. You go to a new job and you're sort of excited, but you know, you fast forward a number of years and you're not quite as excited. Does that apply to any? Do you know anybody that may find themselves or may know anybody that has experienced something like that, right? So I will tell you, whenever I was in high school, Mr. Kerr, the chemistry teacher, pulled me aside and he said, Jess, if you like math and you like chemistry, you ought to consider pharmacy as a career. And I was unaware otherwise, and I said, all right, sounds like a good idea. So I applied to college to go to pharmacy school. I get into pharmacy school. I now am given my first experiential learning assignment. And my first experiential learning assignment is to be an extern at the Thrift Drug in the Monroeville malls. Anybody ever been to the Monroeville Mall? Right, two-level mall, upper level. There was a Thrift Drug up there. I go in there. I'm supposed to show up. I think I was supposed to show up on, I think it was Tuesdays or Thursdays. And I went out the week before I was supposed to start. I wanted to introduce myself. So I go out there and I go back to the back of the store and I say, hi, I'm Jess. I'm going to be your extern here. And they said, hey, have you ever worked in a pharmacy before? And I said, well, no, I haven't. You know, bright-eyed, bushy tails. And if as you're looking at the back of that store, there was the pharmacy here, and just to the right of it was the manager's office. And I'm talking with the pharmacist, because back then, you know, there was the step up, right? The pharmacy, there was the step. And so I was talking there, and over in the manager's office, whenever I said, no, I've never worked in a pharmacy before, they both started snickering. You know, they're like, this kid doesn't know what he's in for. Right, that was the attitude that came from that, and I would go on to intern there for a couple of years, but it was this really teeny tiny pharmacy. In the pharmacy, all they had was about an 8-foot counter, and most of that was dominated by a computer and a printer. There wasn't a whole lot of work because it wasn't a very busy pharmacy. Now, whenever I got done with that school year, I transferred to the Thrift Drug in Franklin. And whenever I went to Franklin, I did the same thing. I showed up there about a week before I was supposed to start. I went in and I introduced myself. And I said, you know, I'm going to be your intern. And they said, great, well, come back here and take a look. And I remember going back into that pharmacy, and they had like 16 feet of counter space. There was like all this stuff, and I knew it was going to be a much busier environment. And I said, oh man, it must be fun working here. And my boss at the time says, yeah, give it 20 or 25 years. So I had some motivation, but there was some part of it where the motivation's going to die out, right? That was made abundantly clear to me. And if you're going to keep going with this, what do you need? You need discipline. You need discipline. So, let me turn to get caught up with my notes. You know, isn't that something that we can be excited and motivated about something, but over some period of time, it can lose its luster? Over some period of time, it can lose its luster. We've all experienced that, have we not? Well, I want to go to a story here, and I'm really going to need some help here from folks that have been in church for a long time, because I'm going to read this story, but I need to get I need a check on this one. So if you would turn with me to the book of 2 Kings chapter 5. We're going to look at verses 1 through 14. And I specifically want to talk to anybody that has either presented or learned this lesson on a flannel graph. Do I have any in here that have learned or taught this? Okay, I need your help with this one, okay? So let's read the story and then I'm going to ask you a question. So 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 1, it reads, "Now Naaman was commander of the army of the king of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. Now bands of raiders from Aram had gone out and taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, 'If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy.' Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel had said. 'By all means go,' the king of Aram replied. 'I will send a letter to the king of Israel.' So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter that he took to the king of Israel read, 'With this letter I am sending my servant Naaman to you so that you may cure him of his leprosy.' As soon as the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his robes and said, 'Am I God? Can I kill and bring back to life? Why does this fellow send someone to me to be cured of his leprosy? See how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me?' When Elisha, the man of God, heard the king of Israel had torn his robes, he sent him this message. 'Why have you torn your robes? Have the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel.' So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to him to say, 'Go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed.' But Naaman was angry and said, 'I thought he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the spot, and cure me of my leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed?' So he turned and went off in a rage." Verse 13. Naaman's servants went to him and said, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, 'Wash and be cleansed'?" So he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had told him, and his flesh was restored and became clean like that of a young boy. Now, who's heard this story before? It's not the most used story, but it's also not the most obscure, right? Now, I would tell you, and this is where I need my flannel graphers here, all right? In my head, as I was reading that story, I thought that I remember a version of this story where Naaman goes to the water and he dips in once and nothing happens, twice and nothing happens, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times nothing has happened, but on the 7th time he was cured. Does that ring a bell to any flannel graphers? Because I don't know where I got that. I absolutely agree. It's because I'm reading this, I'm like, wait a second, didn't he go down 6 times and get nothing? Because obviously I'm reading this story all the time. I seem to recall that it was presented that way. But what did Naaman have to do? He had to be consistent. He had to be consistent in this story. So when we talk about discipline, it's important for us to understand how growth happens. So I'm going to do a little bit of drawing here. For those that, where's my, that's not what I want. This board is just collecting magnets from erasers that have bit the dust. So I want to do a little bit of visualization on how growth happens. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, this is you. Okay, and this is your result. Now, what I want you to notice is that they're about the same size. All right, there's you, and you get you results. That's the way I would say it. But oftentimes, when we want to grow, what we want something that's different over here. We now get something that looks like this. We have a bigger goal. Right? When you grow, there's something that is bigger, that is more than what you currently are. Right? And the thing is that you don't always get this result. Now, maybe occasionally you do. In the game of basketball, you can go out to half court and you can start heaving balls up, and every once in a while one will accidentally go in. Right? That's what happens. But if you want to get good at it, you have to grow, you have to develop, you have to do those things. And so if we want to be able to get a result like this, we need to grow. We need to become bigger, right? Now, when we get bigger, our goal becomes easier. That's sort of the way that this whole thing works out. So you need a bigger you to get your bigger goals. That's part of what happens through this growth process. So let's say that you want to get stronger, right? So you say, you know what, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to lift some weights. I want to be able to lift 100 pounds. Now, in full transparency right now, I would probably max out at about 20. Like I don't have a whole lot of strength in me right now. But if I go to the gym, if this is me, and I'm at 20 pounds, my goal is 100, how many times is that going to happen? It's not. It's not. I need to be consistent to build from little me to big me. This obviously I'm an artist, is you catching the drift of what I'm saying here? All right. So I can go to the gym intentionally. I can work out. I can be motivated. And you know what? At the end of the day, am I able to lift that 100 pounds? No. I haven't reached my goal, right? I could be all excited, but I can also then become very discouraged. I can become discouraged. I can lose my motivation, but let's not forget what the law says. The law of consistency says that motivation gets us going, but discipline keeps you growing. You have to have discipline. So sometimes we have this flawed view of growth. You see, and let's not lose sight of God made each one of us to grow. He made each one of us, he put us down here and he's like, go ahead, get better, grow, get big. Become the person that I intend you to be, right? That's how it goes. I can remember going on work trips and coming home after being away for a week, or oftentimes I'd be gone frequently over several weeks in a row, and all of a sudden, kids grew rapidly. And I want to share with you a couple of things. There's two different ways that we grow. One is referred to as an S curve. This is the S curve because it sort of looks like an S. Right? So what you have is this is our growth, and this is time. And when you go through a growth spurt, you go from here to here in a short period of time. And we have seen this a few times in our lives, right? You see it physically, but you don't always see this in other areas of your life. You see, this is what we sort of are spoiled with. But there's a different type of growth curve, and it's called the mastery curve. The mastery curve looks like this. We have our growth, we have time, but it looks something like this. So you have a time of rapid growth, but then you also have these times of plateau. There's times where you keep doing something, you keep doing something, you keep doing something, and you don't necessarily see that you're getting better. But then you'll have times of growth. Now, this may describe you spiritually. I know it describes me spiritually. Because there was a time that, there was rapid growth. When you're a kid, you're learning all the stories, it's going up. But then there's a time where it's sort of a plateau. And my plateau probably lasted, 20 years. I would say I probably had a 20-year plateau. That today we're going to study the story of David and Goliath. Heard that story, whatever, right? I'm on the plateau. But then one day, I read the story of David and Goliath, and I find that there's this stuff going on, and I see that David goes to the camp, and if you haven't looked at the story in a while, I'll encourage you to do it. David looks out there, and he has a certain way of describing the Philistines. Now, we got some youngsters in here, so I'm not going to tell you what that is. I'll just give you that as your assignment. Go look that up. And you say, wow, I have never seen that before in my life. Those of you that have been with me a long time know exactly what I'm talking about. But, and at that point, I had a period of rapid growth. I started learning biblical covenants. Right? That was what it was. And then there's plateaus. There's rapid growth and there's plateaus. And where I first learned about this, let me find my notes here. I first learned about this in reference to the martial arts. So in the martial arts, you get different belts, right? I think you start off with a white belt and you can potentially go to a black belt. And you'll go for a while and you'll learn some different forms, but then you have to practice those forms for a long time. And then you have to go and do some type of demonstration, and then you might get a promotion to the next color belt. And that sometimes these plateaus can take years. You practice. You got to do the discipline of keeping practicing over those times before you can have that next breakthrough to a period of rapid growth. Now, I think this is the way that life often goes for us. I think this is the way that life often goes for us, although, I went through a big part of life not understanding that that's how it went. Lengthy periods of time at a certain level, followed by times of rapid growth. Now, in this version of the Naaman story that I was told as a kid, I would say that, he was on this thing. Here's dipping once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, and then 7. Boom. Boom. There is that rapid growth. But for those of you who are note takers, I'll give you just a couple of thoughts on consistency. Consistency is key. Consistency is powerful. Consistency compounds. And I think perhaps the most obvious example that we have in nature is that consistency is what allows the river to carve the valley. The river carves the valley through consistency. It just keeps going. Yet, I would say, by show of hands, is there anybody here that doesn't understand the value or appreciate the power of consistency? I think we all recognize that consistency is important, but how many of us struggle with consistency? Right? I think we all struggle with consistency. I was so bad at being consistent at one point that I would have told you the only thing that I'm consistent at is being inconsistent. That's where I found myself, right? So how do we become more consistent? How do we become more consistent? Number one, I have 3 things to give you, but how do we become more consistent? Number one, we need to recognize our need to grow and improve. If you don't recognize that, there's nothing that's going to draw you to be consistent. So first thing is figure out that that you do need to grow and improve. Now the second thing you have to figure out is, how do I improve? How do you go from here to here? What are those things? What are those disciplines that you have to do? And I'll tell you, this is the lesson from Naaman, right? What did Elisha tell him to do? Go wash in the Jordan. And Naaman was like, you've got to be kidding me. There's better rivers back home. There's more sensational things I can be doing. And what did his servant say to him? His servant said, if he would have told you to go do something grandiose, you would have gone and done it. Well, why don't you just go do this simple thing? If you want to become consistent, don't miss this lesson from the story of Naaman. Start with something simple. Start with something simple. Now, a few weeks ago, I was quizzing you on some what we would refer to as common wisdom. But if I said to this, if I gave you this phrase, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. We know that, right? How many of you eat an apple a day? How hard is that to do? Cheryl, you sell apples, for heaven's sake. Okay, so 350 days a year, but there's days that you don't feel like it, right? You know, there's days, and when that, because you can have an apple today, or you could have a Hershey bar, or a Reese cup, right? You know, it's like that's what it is. But it's the consistency. It's the consistency. Can you eat an apple a day? Now, so you want to start with something simple, right? Start with something simple. You need to match it to your personality, right? Do something that works for what you're doing, right? Third thing, I would tell you this: make difficult things how did I write that? Make things difficult or welcome. All right, so Trace just stepped out, but she's doing something fantastic here to start the year. She actually said, she went to the dentist. The dentist said, I noticed that you don't floss your teeth. Has anybody been there? Any of you have a dentist that can tell that you don't floss your teeth? Yeah, like we all do, right? And she had a conversation and said, you know, I don't get just the spool of floss, get those little hook floss things, and put it somewhere obvious. So in our bathroom, there's the sink, and there's the cup with the toothbrush, and right next to it, there's a little bowl, and you know what's in it? A bunch of little floss hooks, whatever they're called. And you know what I've noticed? I've noticed that bowl go down. I haven't touched any of them, just in full transparency. I haven't touched any of them, but I know, and I see them in the garbage can, right? Because you put it somewhere where it's obvious, right? Now there's the opposite of this. Like you know, some of you say, I want to lose a couple pounds this year, and what's a way that you could lose a couple of pounds? You could maybe put away the ice cream. Right? Does anybody here not like ice cream? Well, what if you took that ice cream and you put it in the freezer that's downstairs or out in the garage? What if you made it a little more difficult to get?
I still go and
get it. Those are your choices, right? But yeah, you see, Josh is talking about perseverance. He doesn't care where the ice cream is. He'll go get it, right? He doesn't care if Corinne hides it at the neighbor's house. He'll go get it, right? That's how it goes. But just to understand, these are simple, practical things. If you want to read your Bible every day, what's something you could do? You could put it right on the table. Make it obvious. Putting it on the bookshelf, burying it under something else, you know, that you're making it difficult. Whenever I started walking 10,000 steps a day, you know what I did the night before? I actually set my clothes out and put my shoes there, so whenever I woke up in the morning, I knew what I was supposed to do. Because the other thing I could do in the morning is hit the snooze bar. That's easy. That was easy, right? Start with something simple. Make it match, you know, your personality. Make things difficult or welcome, depending on what you're wanting to do. Have patience. Have patience as you go through this. Patience and grace for and with yourself. Because know this, you will stumble. You'll miss. You'll miss. And what happens when you miss? You start again. You start again. You can miss one day, don't miss two, right? Do this. Recognize the value in the process. The victory is doing something regularly. The victory is doing something daily. And then have a good reason for it. Have a good reason for doing what you're doing. Some people that are doing things and they don't even know why they're doing it. But if you have a good reason for what you're doing, you'll figure it out. You will figure out ways to become more consistent. So I want to just share an observation with you. How am I doing on time? I'm getting short. Let me share with you an observation. I love to rumor monger. I'll start rumors just for fun. I can't give a good example here because you'll lose. Any respect you have for me, you'll lose if I share some of the examples that I've come up with. There's a rumor that we had over 500 people here on Christmas Eve evening. Think about it, 500 people. And I want to ask you this. What if there's us and there's our goal? Now, right now, I think we're 350, 400 on any given Sunday. But I'm going to say, what if we go from 350 or 400? What if we go to 500? How do we do that? How do we do that? How does this us go from here to here? I'm going to tell you right now, you got to grow. We got to grow. Us has to get like this. To get like this. I want you to think of all the impact that can have. Let me see, I'm going off my notes here, so let me see if I missed anything. What if instead of having 500 people here on a special occasion, what if we had 500 people here every week? What would our community look like? What would your relationships look like? What would that be like, right? But we need to be able to grow to be able to handle that every week. Now, I say that, and Katie's here today, but I can see her being uncomfortable because if 500 people show up, you know what the 500 people are going to bring with them? Kids. They're going to bring kids with them. And what do we need? We need help in the back for Sunday school class, for Mighty Messengers. There's an opportunity there. Let me extend the opportunity here for you to grow with some level of consistency in serving with youth ministry. Let me encourage you to consider that. All right? For us to go from here to here is going to take consistency. One-offs aren't going to do us every week. We have to consistently work on growing to get better for that. We need to be able to make the environment welcome for that to show up. So with that, let me just move in to wrap up here. We have talked about in our core values that we value growth, right? We value growth. And there's benefits that you gain from growing. There's benefits that you yourself get from when you grow, but also understand this, that when you grow, the benefits also spill over to the people all around you. When you grow, you make things better for the people around you. Now, I haven't used this phrase for a long time, but I will use it here today. I find that it's always harder to do the right thing. I have found that it's always harder to do the right thing. It's always harder to be disciplined. It's harder to be consistent, right? So I want to encourage you today to be disciplined. I want to encourage you today to be consistent. I want to encourage you today to do the right things. Because if we do the things that are hard, we will find that things around us will become easy. If we do the things that are hard, things around us will become easy. Our discipline will pay off. So that is what I have prepared for you this morning. I'll just close by putting the three letters on the board, ACT. Based on what we have discussed here this morning, what action will you take? What change will you make? And is there something that you learned today that you can share with somebody else for your sake and theirs.